Let's get on to the big stories of the day, and who better to join us than the media writer for the Australian, Sophie Ellsworth. Sophie, welcome. Great to catch up with you as well.
Great to be here, Steve.
Just before we get on to other matters, what is your reaction to Premier Dan Andrews' decision to cancel the 2026 Commonwealth Games as a proud working Victorian?
Well, Steve, you had a very good editorial at the top of your show. This is a monumental failure that has made international headlines and is a shameful step in Andrews' legacy of Victoria. Today was hugely embarrassing. It's making headlines all around the world, particularly over in the UK. But I will say this, Steve, the Liberal opposition went along with the Commonwealth Games the whole way through this. It's only now that they've come out and really attacked it publicly, and rightly so, they should. But they were never in opposition to this. I thought it was a poor decision from the beginning. Don't forget, we've already got $165 billion net debt. Well, we plan to have that by 2025-26. So our debt levels here are through the roof. We've got blowouts everywhere in tunnels and roadworks and all the rest of it. I think this is a real disgrace the way it's been handled. And also, I will make this final point, Steve. Where is the COVID commander, now the Commonwealth Games chief, Jerome Weinmar? He was put in that plum position, as you point out, to lead the Games. He stuffed this up. He stuffed up COVID. Where is he today? Because I didn't see him answering questions in these press conferences.
No, he was there but wasn't allowed to speak. Now, I want to tap into your daytime expertise, but you work analysing how the media works in Australia. Dan Andrews, I think, is a fascinating case. He's made a career out of ignoring traditional media. He hasn't been on the state's top-rating radio station, 3AW, for as long as I can remember, 5-6 years, doesn't talk to Neil Mitchell, who rates number one. He's pulled advertising from the city's daily newspapers, including the Herald Sun. He's got a media team bigger than most newsrooms, and it keeps getting re-elected. It seems to have worked for him. Now, look, I've probably written, I'm guessing here, a dozen or more opinion columns criticising him, thousands of comments from readers supporting my arguments, but he just shrugs his shoulders. And I note, very interesting late today, Sophie, up it went on Twitter, Daniel Andrews, blue tick, and his explanation of what he'd done, and it's been viewed 600,000 times.
Well, Steve, he doesn't really have to answer very much to the media. The media in Victoria, apart from a few outlets such as News Corp, Sky News, yourself in your columns, actually take him to task. He's got a massive support base within the media contingency. The media down here is heavily skewed left. And also, not forgetting, we have an incredibly pathetic opposition who have not been able to land a glove on this guy. And it'll be interesting to see how they play this in the coming days and whether they can have an impact here. But he hasn't gone on Neil Mitchell, one of the key broadcasters down here. He doesn't go on mainstream media and do interviews, and he romped it in the last election. So go figure, and not forgetting how he handled the pandemic. So I don't know how much impact this will have, Steve. So we'll all be waiting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a big impact on him. Let's get on to national politics. The Treasurer today has been enforced to defend remarks made by the incoming RBA Governor, Michelle Bullock, in a recent speech. She said unemployment rate needs to go up, rise from its current 3.6 to 4.5 to help bring inflation down. Now, that's angered the union. Sally McManus said upping unemployment's not the answer. And in response, the Treasurer said, these comments are relatively uncontroversial. And you got Finance Minister Katie Gallagher saying even if the unemployment rate goes up to 4.5%, which means up to 150,000 extra people out of a job, the level of those out of work will still be historically low. Try telling that to the 150,000 people who lost their job.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here, Steve, is obviously Michelle Bullock's going to have to be really careful with her words because this is controversial. It's far from uncontroversial. I think she was trying to explain to bring inflation down, jobs need to be lost. So she was trying to execute the point, but it's obviously resulted in all this backlash. So I think as she comes into this role as governor, she will be far more careful with her words. And as we know with Philip Lowe, he often got himself into sticky situations with the media for saying things perhaps he shouldn't have been. But some have argued at least she's being transparent about what she thinks.
We got some leaked data today from Coles. I think cost of living, like you just said, is the biggest issue. All Australians are struggling. It's revealed that shoppers are cutting back on essentials like kitchen cleaners, body wash, sponges, wipes, bathroom disinfectants. Is it really got that bad? Have you had to cut back on something that you would normally buy when you go to Coles?
Absolutely, Steve. I think everyone is looking at prices and going, do I really need that? I've noticed so many prices have gone up, on things that we need to buy every day at the supermarket. And I think the government needs to really focus back in on cost of living. We're hearing far too much about this green dream. We're hearing far too much about the voice. And I think what mums and dads at home in the suburbs tonight watching this program are really thinking about is how are they going to pay their bills, Steve? And this shows through in this research today.
Yeah, you see people in supermarkets nervously taking things back out of the trolley because they simply can't afford to pay the total bill. And, you have people, we hear that increased numbers of people are not even turning on their electricity heaters or gas heaters because they can't afford to pay their energy bills. I mean, it feels like, in a sense, we're living in some sort of third world country. We shouldn't be having elderly people sitting at home at night cold or putting an electric blanket around themselves because they can't afford to put a heater on.
Look, Steve, it's very grim for some people out there, especially those in the low income brackets. It is tough out there. We're seeing everything go up and virtually nothing go down. And obviously people blame the government for this and their policies that they've implemented. But I think a lot of people would be wondering, with Albanese in as Prime Minister, would have the coalition, had they won the election, done anything differently, and would we be better off? And I think quite a few people would be saying perhaps not. So I think, Steve, everyone is watching their money very, very closely, particularly mortgage holders and renters out there with those overheads every week. It's getting tough, and it's only going to get tougher with more interest rate rises, I expect, on the horizon.
Sophie Ellsworth, always a pleasure to catch up. Thank you very much for your help tonight.